Hey, Howard here again at 82 Maple. And I've got to share with you that one of the really interesting things that starts to happen is when friends and family start figuring out what the little Norwood sawmill, wood miser edger, and little workshop can turn out. What I'm meaning is, requests start to come in. Hey, do you think you could build me a little something that looks like this or does that? And that's exactly what happened here a week or so ago when Paul and Janet, who own this little Airstream that's behind me here, came by and took a look at some chunks of wood that I had sitting around. Paul and Janet are typically off in Arizona, Mexico, or going across the country. But hey, COVID changed everything. And so they're needing a couple of little odds and ends around their place. Earlier this year, Coral and I built some planter boxes for them, and they asked if I could build them a little something to hang their garden hoses on in two separate locations. So let's go inside the little workshop in progress and see what we're doing about this. All right, so here's what we're looking to construct. This will be a little hose holder, and I'm going to leave it to Paul to put whatever hose holding device he wants onto the upright. But I was looking for a piece of wood that had significant weight. That piece of wood weighs about 35 pounds. It'll weigh a little bit less when it's dry. A little upright to keep the hose off the ground, and that's what we're aiming for. So this all started with some scrap pieces of wood. I had a couple of 49 or 50 inch pieces of 2.5 by 10 inch, and then this is a 6 by 10 that originally was 52 inches long. So I started, I cleaned it up a little bit, ran some bevels on it with my little hand plane, ran some 120 grit on the three surfaces that are not facing the ground. There's a little bit of a crack here. That's going to be down on the ground. And these are the tools I'm using. I'll put a little itemized list down below of exactly what I'm using for each of the little phases of this project, but it's going to give me just a lot of joy to, inside of 2.5, 3 hours max, front to back, to build a couple of these hose holders for Paul and Janet. And let's just look at this wood a little, come back to it for a minute. So I'm somewhat limited because I wanted to tackle this project just using basic hand tools, just to heighten the challenge a little bit. And so it's easy enough to cut out the notch here, which I've done for the upright, but my circular saw, my hand circular saw, only has a 2.5 inch depth of cut. So I got started, probably as you would, squaring it off, marking the line, cutting from this side, then doing the same thing from this side. That still left a full inch of wood down the middle, plus ends. I didn't really want to walk the circular saw back in here. So what to do about that? Well, I've got to tell you, my recently acquired hacksaw is just amazing. And I started out using the torch saw blade on it, thinking that would give me the same width of cut as my circular saw did. And in fact, the torch is very fine and just kept bogging because of the sawdust. So I took a chance, put the wrecker blade onto it, hoping that it wasn't going to be too wide, and it wasn't. It worked out perfectly. So while this piece of wood was still intact here, I just slipped in, started cutting, finished that cutout, and it actually came out not bad. I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup with a light sanding, but should be good to go here momentarily. We're going to fast forward through key components of the build, but stay tuned. It's going to be a ton of fun. All right, it's time to start putting this together. Here we go. All right, so I've got to drill some holes here for the lag bolts. And to help me with that, so that I get everything set up correctly the first time around, is I created a little template out of a piece of plywood. I'm going to apply this to the base and apply it to the upright as well. Let's go for the drill. Now, I drilled 1/4-inch holes in the base to match up with the size of the lag bolt and what it's going to require in order to get some grip and hold everything together. But for the upright, I'm going to make them just a 16th larger. So we're going for a 5/16 bit for this. But I don't want to ruin my template, so I did the pilot holes with 1/4-inch. Well, there we are. One down, one to go. Hey, so that was Coral just coming in to let me know that she's hooked the horse trailer up to the F350 and is headed out with one of our horses, possibly a horse trade or swap going on today. That's Cinna, our big black fat cat. I think he's eating well these days, but just wanted to zero in on the horse trailer for a minute. Nothing goes to waste at 82 Maple. And if you're wondering what we do with at least some of the sawdust, well, that's where it lands. We just dumped a wheelbarrow full of it into the back of the trailer pre-trip. And I think it's this little guy that's going for a ride today. His name is Asher. He's 7 years old. He is a favorite with the grandchildren. But again, we may be trading up for something more, better, different. I'm not quite sure what's happening, but now it's back to the woodworking. And here we are, picking up where we left off. Here at 82 Maple, you get the real story of how these little projects go down, not the highly edited versions. So you've probably seen me biting into this piece of wood and going, Howard, what in the world are you doing? That isn't at all what you were doing with that piece of wood. Well, you know what they say about multitasking. It's kind of like being on drugs. Well, I'm not on drugs, but I certainly am multitasking today. I started the woodworking project and then got a horse trailer hooked up. Then went back to woodworking, and then some folks came by to pick up some firewood, and went back to woodworking. And what's that I hear outside my barn shop? Sounds like a horse. Poke my head out the door. It is a horse, 500 feet away from where it's supposed to be. Had pushed through a gate, collected that, and went back to woodworking. And I know you were screaming through the video, Howard, you're cutting that wonderful piece of wood all wrong. So one might say that that piece of wood is headed for the scrap heap. But we don't throw much of this away. It'll show up in another form. But in terms of turning into a garden hose stand for Paul and Janet, it's not going to resurface in that form. So I scrambled around in my wood shed and found a sweet little piece of kind of 4 1/4 inch by 12 inches. And it turned out, don't ask me how this happens, but sometimes the horseshoes go the right way up. It was exactly 26 inches long, which is the precise length of that piece. So being that these two garden hose stands are on opposite sides of Paul and Janet's residence, I think this is going to be just fine. So I'm going to flip the other camera on. We'll make the cut in the right spot this time, and let's get back at it. It's there's just never-ending amusement here at 82 Maple, the way it really happens. Okay, moment of truth here at 82 Maple. Let's get this put together, and we'll bolt it in. Should go, and here's wishing us luck. I hope I don't hit this hard with the hammer and find it doesn't go all the way to the bottom, but I think we're pretty good. Cross your fingers. Well, if you didn't think I wasn't holding my breath through all of that, you were mistaken, because this little snap-on gun has enough torque to spin the heads right off of those leg bolts. And to get a little better grip than I got on the last one, I left maybe about that much of the base block undrilled, and I have spun the heads off those bolts again on previous projects, so was just kind of nursing it through there, but we're good. And I have to plane a little bit on the bottom just because I had to square up the upright a tiny little bit before bolting it down, and it looks like we're getting close to done, so hang in here. There we go. I think we got it. And now for the rest of the story. So at the end of my workday, I pulled the chip out of my little GoPro to start prepping the video, and guess what I discovered? In addition to all of my other missteps on this project, I had somehow put my wrap-up comments onto a time-lapse setting. No sound, my wrap-up was done in 1.5 seconds. Just further proof that I shouldn't have been distracted, I shouldn't have been multitasking, and one definitely shouldn't be distracted and multitasking when one is handling power tools. But hey, it's all good. Still got 8 fingers, 2 thumbs, and just a couple of other things that I was going to say by way of wrap up. You know, laying out a project like this is really all about the tools. Front to back, this took probably 2 hours. That's with the redos and all of that. You'll see over here the little table and benches that were the feature of another video. I don't know, it was something like 28 minutes for most of that build. And it's just about determining before one gets started what tools one needs, what supplies are needed, and having a mental picture of roughly what it is that one is going to create. And so a lot of times I just literally operate off a little napkin sketch with some key dimensions written down on it, and then I track stuff. And for me at least, that keeps the project really fun. I'm not beholden to some blueprint. And speaking of fun, that's really what it's all about. Even when doing and redoing stuff, to just reset and say, why am I doing this? It's a ton of fun. What am I creating? Well, I'm creating hopefully something that our friends, in this case, Paul and Janet, are going to enjoy. So here's to you, Paul and Janet, and here's to your journey being fun and fulfilling as well for you, your family, and friends. Stay tuned.